I've set up the game, Storm of Steel, ready for play. You can see all the forces arrayed on the map. What you can't distinguish so well at this distance, but perhaps I can point it out, is a difference between here. These green forces here are Russian, the light blue Austro-Hungarian, and then these kind of mute green are the German forces. So these are the German East Front and these are the German West Front forces, and these are the French, obviously. Not many Brits on at the moment, and you can just see down there some of the Russian reinforcements that come in and on the third impulse of this turn, so they're still being mobilized. And then you can see this is the turn we start on. You get some Austro-Hungarian mobilizations, some British, and then later some more Russians here and some assorted naval units there. So you can see, although the Russians generally get a lower mobilization multiple, they do already have a lot of units in mobilization. I guess that simulates them taking a long time to get formed up and maybe to be called in from Siberia and places like that. But what I really wanted to talk about is this, the layout of the German forces and victory objectives and war aims, because after looking carefully at the victory objectives and war aims, the victory objectives, I was able to formulate the war aims for each side. So basically, each side has 3 victory objectives. One is to retain high or average morale. The other is to control 10 or more industrial or petroleum hexes of the enemy. And then the final one is for any 2 of the enemy major powers to surrender. And that is the real kicker, because what that is going to mean is that America could potentially surrender. I guess it's not very likely. Great Britain, will be hard to get them to surrender because, well, let's see why. I'll show you according to the political events table, which is where the important business is going on. So here I think you can see that the political events table allows for a die roll of 1 to 6, but on a 0 you have revolution. On a 7+ you have crusade, which is sort of extra bonuses for your nation, and each nation rolls for this separately at the end of every turn. That's every quarter. So revolution is where surrender occurs, because well, then you have to roll on another table. But the first important point to note is that in 1914 to 1915, on the modifiers we have below, so 1914 to 1915 there's a +1, which means and then there's a -1 on 1917 to 1919, and a -1 on low morale, and a +1 on high morale. So effectively what that says is that even if you get your opponent down to low morale in 1914 or 1915, which is very unlikely, they're still not going to surrender. It's impossible to reach that 0 on the table. So the 0 is likely in 1917 or 1919 with low morale. So basically a third of the time, if you have low morale and it's 1917 or later, you're going to surrender. You're going to have revolution But if your morale isn't low, it's only going to happen a sixth of the time. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Now, you are rolling 4 times every year. So in 1917, 1918, and then this campaign ends the summer 1919. So for 2 years, you'd have 4 rolls. So it's probably going to happen at one time in 1917, 1918, unless your morale is high, in which case it won't. But that gives you some idea of the likelihood. So first thing to note there is that it's never going to happen in before 1916. And then it could happen in 1916 if you're on low morale. Then the next thing to notice is that, okay, so say revolution has happened. What does that mean? Then you move to the revolution table. And again, it's a D6. This time on a 1, you get Red Terror. On a 2, Nationalist Revolution. Now, both these results equal surrender of that country, and with differing effects, but basically it's surrender which will satisfy a victory objective. Now we note the modifiers again. Britain and the United States get +2, so that's never going to happen to them unless you have a minus, which is that the capital of the country is enemy occupied. Now, actually looking at that, the Central Powers can never enter the off-map table, which is where the American capital is, so that's never going to happen. So America will actually never surrender. No, but they could have a nationalist revolution though. But there's a note that yes, sorry, so +2 and the -1 is net of +1. So yes, there could be a nationalist revolution, which in effect would mean America surrenders in game effect. They're out of the war. So that other modifier is -2 for Russia and -1 for Austria-Hungary, or the Ottoman Empire, but we're just interested in the major powers at the moment. So you note that it's a lot easier for Russia to end in nationalist revolution or the Red Terror. And it's also slightly easier for Austria-Hungary to end so. So that means those are the weaker sides for each side. Now, with those considerations in mind, we formed up the war aims of first the Central Powers, because the onus is really on them, seeing that it's easier